Hello. Just turn this a bit. Quiet you. What? Be quiet you, and no farting. Right, okay. This is the one. This is the video I've been planning to make for a long time. And I got distracted, sadly, by the backstory of the flood, which I didn't realise that it probably had more importance than the flood story itself. On my other videos, you've probably got my feelings on why the flood story doesn't work as a backstory, because of the premise of God wanting to destroy everything on the earth, but letting the people who caused the trouble, which would be the angels, get away with it. In other words, if you're trying to look for a God of love in that story, you're not going to find him. The whole thing just stank to me, the fact that he just wanted to destroy the earth. And luckily he looked down the earth and spotted Noah and just thought, I'll still destroy the earth, but I need to make sure that he doesn't drown. And then while we're at it, now that I'm saving Noah and his family and his children, while I'm at it, while I'm preserving their life, I may as well preserve the creation that I've spent ages in creating, because I was going to completely destroy everybody, and just do what in a fit of rage, destroy the lot. But if I'm going to save him, I may as well go to the trouble of saving all the creatures in the earth. So that's what happened, and as you're probably aware, I think that's complete nonsense. But anyway, right, why is it important? So why is the story of the flood important, whether it's true or not? Why is it important? Because as far as I'm concerned, it is the elephant in the room when it comes to believing in anything associated with the Bible. It's the one story that most of us don't like to think about too much, because there are so many questions that arise from the flood story that there are no significant answers. And as we do know, and as I explained in the past, that I did search when I was a witness all the society's publications to try and to get some sort of explanation, thinking if anybody's going to know the answers to these questions, they will, only to be hugely disappointed by the answers that I received. It really disappointed me. And it's important for several ways, because when it comes to all these I say supernatural, but I don't mean it from a demonic sense, but when it comes to the supernatural things that you see occurring in the Bible, when you read after read supernatural event in relating to for instance the parting of the waves and the firstborn dying in Egypt, and then whole city walls coming down and a whole army being killed in the middle of the night, and mouths of lions being stopped, and then people being brought from the dead, and then the sick being cured, and food being provided out of basically a couple of loaves and fishes, and then a reappearance from the dead and more miracles. Well, you get the drift. So all of those things there are like supernatural things which today there is no proof of. There is literally no proof. We can't go back and say, yes, we have definite proof that these things happened. The only thing we know that happened is because they're in the Bible. And that's it. So if you take the Bible at face value and you believe it's in the Bible, that's the only proof you've got. Now, when we look at other civilizations which were around at the time of the Bible timeline, you find people around these civilizations and empires which came and went, kings and generals or whatever, and they fought similar to the Jews, the nation of Israel. They fought many battles, some of them against the nation of Israel, and when they won them, of course, they would then build great arches, or have inscribed in stone, or massive memorials of the wonderful things they'd done, how they managed to beat other nations, including the nation of Israel. And they describe these wonders not only on themselves, but also to the God they worshipped at the time. You can see it all the time, always giving praise to whichever god it is. The Assyrians did it, and the Medes Persians did it, and the Babylonians did it, and the Egyptians did it, and the Romans and the Greeks. You get the point. It's scattered all over. You can even see it today. You can go places. It's always I did it with the help of, the God of the week, as it were. But now, us going 4,000, 5,000 years, 2,000 years from all these events, we don't ascribe a particular general or king winning a battle. We don't ascribe that victory to whichever god they worshipped at the time. We say, well, the reason why they won that battle is quite simple. They were canny in the deployment of cavalry or archery or chariots or whatever. We all do, or warships or boats or whatever it is, or we put it down to maybe some tactical genius on behalf of one side and a bit of stupidity on the other side. We don't say, the reason why this particular general or king won that battle is because of the god at the time. We've completely dismissed this because we now don't believe in those gods. The problem with the Bible is, of course, the Bible has many instances of lots of supernatural events occurring which are ascribed to God doing this, but there's no proof of it. And of course, the problem is if we believe in the Bible and the God of the Bible, we have to think, right, it becomes a question of faith. It becomes a question of faith because there's no proof. There's obviously proof that there was a guy called Jesus Christ, but there's no proof at all that he did what he did. We believe there was a Moses, but there's no proof of what happened. And then we come to the story of Noah. You see, this is where we should have proof, because the events that occurred in the Bible timeline all happened in a small area of the world. In fact, I have a drumstick here and a handy map. So they all happened round about here. This area here, Israel, Jerusalem, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, or whatever they used to be called. So they all happen round about here. That's where most events occurred in the Bible. The difference with the flood is, it happened all over here. The whole world, which is different. Interestingly, when you look at all the things that happened in the Bible, probably the flood is the greatest demonstration of the power of God than anything else. It really is. That when it comes to some sort of supernatural event which was caused by a higher being than us, the flood's the one for you every time. It's in the Bible, it's quite expansive, and even Jesus alluded to, I believe, the end of the world, saying it will just be like it was in the time of the flood. So even Jesus Christ, even if we want to dismiss, even if we want to go, right, we're not going to really believe a lot of the Hebrew scriptures, but I'm really good on my Jesus stuff. I love my Jesus stuff. I love all the New Testament and the Gentile. I love that sort of God, the sort of earthly manifestation of God. I like that. Not too keen on what happened in the Hebrew scriptures. Well, here's a problem, because Jesus alluded to the time of the end being just as it was in the time of Noah. So even Jesus Christ, most people's Saviour today, believed in the story of Noah. So this is why it is the elephant in the room. Because unlike all the events which happened in the small area, we now can look at events happening in the whole area, and if that event does not come up to just some reasonable explanation, if you look at it and then it doesn't make any sense and there's no proof, well, that puts a question mark on everything, doesn't it? It really, really does. Because if the flood didn't really happen, and it didn't happen all that long ago, actually. If the flood didn't really happen, the ramifications is, where do you go from there? Where do you go from the flood not happening? What other bits do you then say, well, maybe that happened? Everything that happened with Moses, everything that happened with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, everything that happened with Goliath, David, Saul, Daniel, Jesus, the apostles. Where does it stop? You see, you can't cherry pick it. You can't go into the Bible and say, well, I believe that, I believe that, I believe that, but I don't believe that, and then still think that's all right. You can't do that. And for the majority of Christian religions today, which are solely based on the Bible, if it's confirmed without any doubt that the flood story didn't happen, I'll get back to that later, but it should make you think. So anyway, we'll crack on with the flood story. Now, as I've said before, I don't have a Bible anymore. Sadly, they went. Common sense came in and the Bible went out. So the Bible's gone, the Bible's away. So I printed off some bits here from which version is this? The New International Version, but I don't think, reading this, it doesn't seem any different than what I remember it in the New World Translation. But we'll crack on. I'll take out a lot of bits that don't apply, and then other bits will come back. So, basically, God says, I'm going to put an end to all the people on the earth. It's full of violence because of them. I am going to destroy both them and the earth. I want you to make an ark, and then he gives him all the instructions how to make it, how tall it's got to be, the roof, blah, 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 blah. And he says, I'm going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. Well, isn't that nice? Isn't that very nice, God? Lovely, lovely God. You're not going to kill your angelic sons, but I'm afraid the monkeys in Africa, they've had it just because everything's going to perish. But luckily, he's going to enter a covenant with Noah and his sons and his wives. And he says to them, or maybe this is the first time he gets these remarkable instructions, you're going to bring into the ark 2 of every living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird. 2 of every kind of bird. Now bear that in mind. 2 of every kind of bird. Of every kind of animal. Of every kind of animal. And every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be alive. They will come to you. Oh, bizarre. So you are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. So it says there, we'll come to that, is every kind of creature, 2 of them are going to come to him, and that he's got to get enough food for them and him for the duration of the flood. And it says Noah did everything that God commanded him. Well done, Noah. So the next thing is, the Lord then said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your family, because I have found this you righteous in this generation. Take with you, there's more expansive on this, take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate. Every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate. Also 7 pairs of every kind of bird. Hold on a second, hold on, what's happened there? So we've gone from 2 of every kind of bird to now taking 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female. I don't know what's happened there. Is that, are we on to 9 pairs of every type of bird? I'm confused. It's sort of contradiction there. It doesn't make any sense, that one. So anyway, sorry, I never wrote this stuff. I really didn't write it. So it goes, 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. He's only up to making everything again, and it basically says, I've made it, so easy come, easy go, I'll destroy it, but luckily for you, you're in the ark. So anyway, we'll crack on. So Noah was 600 years, and it says the flood waters came in. So apparently there's water coming up as well as down, according to this. It says Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds and all creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days, the flood waters came in the earth. Okay. It says here, in the 600th year of Noah's life, the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And it repeats the same thing, creatures, pairs, blah 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 blah, animals, every living thing, and then it says that the Lord shut him in. So probably the Lord, did he lift the gate? The door? I don't know, it's confusing. So anyway, for 40 days The flood kept them coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. Yes, that makes sense. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth. Oh, hold on a second, let me just get this phone. Hello? No, it's not. If you ring one of his mobiles, you'll get him, and I'm in the middle. Well, just keep on to him. All right, I need to go. I'm in the middle of something. All right. Cheers, bye. Wasn't important. Right. So anyway, it says there. Where was I? I'm getting confused. All right. Okay. So rain fell there 40 days and 40 nights. So then it cracks on to say that the increase, it covered the whole of the earth, and all the high mountains under the heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountain's depth of more than 15 cubits. Don't know what 15 cubits is. Look it up. Every living thing, well, anyway, basically, the important bit is that every living thing that moved on land perished. The birds, the livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. So in other words, complete and utter destruction. Now, there's no shades of grey on this one. There really isn't. Really, this is it. In other words, the only living creatures in the whole planet were with Noah round about here. That's it. So you've got the whole earth full of living creatures. And the only ones are with this guy here in this ark. The only ones. The only ones left. Hold on. Need to take this. Hello? Hello? Yeah, he says he's passed. He's passed. Right, so good. Anyway, I need to go. He's not here with me. I don't know where he is. So I need to speak to him on his mobile. Fine. Right, anyway. So my son's just passed his driving test, so everybody's excited, but I already knew. So anyway, so basically, there's no grey area at all. Everything on the earth has been completely, utterly wiped out. There is nothing, not a sausage. There isn't even, let me think. There isn't a spider that survived this one. Not a chance. They're all dead. Every living creature, they're gone. Unless you're in the ark, you're buggered. It's as simple as that. So let's crack on with the next bit. So, I love it. I really like this one. This one's a cracker. But God remembered Noah. What was God doing? So imagine God's in heaven. He's just destroyed everything on the earth. There's this wooden box floating upon the surface of the earth with Noah in it. With representations of every living creature in there. And it says, then God remembered. Thank God he remembered that one then. Thank God all of a sudden, for goodness sake, the earth, the flood, the ark, Noah, oh my God. How many planets was God destroying at this time that all of a sudden he remembered? He remembered the ark. How many planets was he wiping out in his material universe that all of a sudden it came back to him, the ark? Anyway, I move on. So God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock that were with him in the ark. And God sent a wind. Obviously, if this wind didn't come, the waters would never receded. So he sent a wind over the earth and the waters receded. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens have been closed, and the rain has stopped falling from the sky. Hurrah! The water receded steadily from the earth. Where it went, no one knows. At the end of 150 days, the water had gone down. Gone down, I wouldn't like to actually figure out how many cubits of water, cubits, gone biblical there for a second, how many square meters of water had fallen on the earth, but it must have been phenomenal. Honestly, to cover the whole earth, to cover the whole landmass we have there, it must have been phenomenal. Honestly. So there's no there's no explanation where this water's gone, but it hasn't disappeared due to supernatural forces. Anyway, so eventually the water recedes slowly for the earth, and at the end of the 150 days the water had gone down. So apparently the water's gone down at this moment. Okay. So on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mount of Ararat, which we now know is in Turkey. And the waters continue to recede. Hold on a second. A second ago, you'd said that the waters have gone down. Obviously, they've gone down a bit more. So the waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. Right, so Christ Almighty, it must have been, the water was really high, that it took so long that you'd just been able to see the tops of other mountains. Phenomenal. So anyway, after 40 days, Noah opened a window he'd made in the ark. Well, thank God for that, because otherwise he could have been stuck in that ark, not knowing what was going on. You know, like maybe a Japanese person thinking a war was going on because he didn't have a viewpoint. It's just nonsense. So anyway, after 40 days, Noah opened a window he'd made in the ark, and he sent out a raven. A raven. So a specific type of bird. A raven went out. And remember that there were 7 of these, or was it 7 plus 2? I'm confused the way that happened. Anyway, let's say there's 7. Well, let's say there's 2 ravens, because then it gets a bit confusing. So then he sent out a dove. And the raven kept on flying back and forwards. The raven kept on coming back and forwards. Can't find any land. Nowhere for him to settle. So then he sent out a dove to see if the water receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could not find nowhere to perch, because there was water all over the surface of the earth. So I don't know where this receding bit's coming from, because clearly the raven and the dove have both gone out, and there's nowhere for them to land. Now what I don't understand is, apparently Noah is on Mount Ararat, which according to the Bible is the tallest mountain in the world. Well, we know that's not true. We know that's true. In fact, Mount Ararat is... I don't know how big it is. Apparently it's like 5,000 metres tall. Something like that. Anyway, it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, he's on Mount Ararat. Now what I don't understand is, he's looking out of a window. Surely he could see himself. You know, if I was on top of a mountain and there was a window, I'd be able to look myself and go, no, I can't see anything but the sea for miles and miles. If I was up a tall mountain and I'm looking out of this window, I must be able to see what the dove and the raven can see before they even leave. In other words, there is no land. There's no point sending the dove and the raven out, because I can see just as good as them. In fact, my eyesight's been going, I'll bring the boys up. Boys, come up here. What can you see out the window? Can you see any land? No. All the scene is the sea. Oh, should we send these 2 guys out? Let's just see if they come back. They're just flying, you know, apparently they're flying around. You know, how far is it going to go, for Christ's sake? Oh. See how this story doesn't work. So anyway, so next thing is, they're looking at the sea and they can't see anything. So it says, next thing is, of course, what happens next? Okay, so the dove couldn't find anywhere. The dove, specific, the dove, another type of bird. Okay, so the dove goes out and he returns back to the ark because he can't find anything. So next thing is, he reached out his hand and took the dove back in and brought it back into the ark. He waited 7 more days and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned in the evening, then its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. An olive leaf, yes. And you do get a lot of olives in that area of the country. So it's funny you got an olive leaf and not another leaf which you only found in other areas of the world. Right, so let's see. Somehow he's found an olive leaf. So then no, this is the only point that Noah knew that the water receded from the earth. It doesn't make any sense. He's looking out the window and he can't see the fact that there's land ahoy, and he has to wait for a dove to go out to bring back an olive leaf. for him to know it's now safe to leave the ark. Oh, come on, this is nonsense. Oh dear. So, for some bizarre reason, Noah already knows that the waters have receded. And bizarrely, he sends out the dove again. Off you go. What's the point of going out yet again? So he goes out again. But this time it didn't return. So in other words, if we go back, if there were only two types of dove, that's the end of the doves as we know it. That's it. Because one went off and he never came back. Don't know what happened to him. I don't know. There's no explanation to that really. It really is. So anyway, so at this point, with the non-appearance of the dove, oh. So eventually, instead of Noah actually decided, let's go out, he says, then God said to Noah, come out the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creatures with you, the birds, the animals and the creatures that move along the ground, so that they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase their number on it. This is a familiar ring to what happened in the Garden of Eden. Yeah, be fruitful, fill the earth. It's bizarre. It's like the Garden of Eden Part 2. It's like those sort of rebooting of the Star Wars films. Familiar story, different cast. So anyway, so Noah came out together with his sons and his wife and his wives, all the animals and the creatures that move along the ground, and all the birds, everything that moves on the ground, all came out the ark, one after another. So this is it. They're all out the ark. All are coming out the ark because apparently the waters receded. So he says, so Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Here we go. We're already killing the animals. We're just out the ark. And for some reason, it comes into Noah's head to sacrifice something. So we're already at it. We're just out the ark. And straight away, Noah's he's taken some of the clean animals and clean birds, and he sacrificed birds on his. So heaven knows what we lost at that point. Potentially there was only a few of them. That could have had a detrimental effect on the species. But especially the birds, especially if there's only two of them in it. So heaven knows what we're doing there. Already he's, already he's causing the extinction of some type of birds we'll probably never get to know. So the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, oh, I love that smell of those birds which we've just made extinct. Oh, it's fantastic. So he smelled it, and then all of a sudden God says, never again will I curse the ground because of humans. Hold on a second. How did we make the earth? How did we, if we were only living over here at the time, manage to sort of contaminate the ground over here, or over here, up here, over there? Doesn't make any sense, does it? It really doesn't. But anyway, so he says, never again will I curse the ground because of humans. Even though, here we go again, always picking on the little man. Even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. Lovely, that's lovely, isn't it? Basically what God's saying, I'm not going to curse the ground again because of them, because from the moment they're born from child, it's just the human heart is evil from childhood. So what chance do we have? He's not blaming the angels who caused the chaos and the wickedness, but again it's us. It's the little people that get it again. So he says, never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. Yeah, so why did you do it in the first place? What was the necessity of destroying every living thing upon the earth? And then he comes out with some bit of poetry, which I don't even want to read, to be honest with you. So we come to the end. We come to the end of the story. Dear me, and what a story. So, then God blessed Noah and his son, saying to be fruitful and increase and fill the earth. It's the Star Wars reboot. The fear and the dread of... Right, here we go, this is interesting. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, on every creature that moves on the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that now lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you green plants, I now give you everything. Now, according to that, it means that prior to the flood, nobody's had a tasty steak. That hadn't happened. Or a roast chicken dinner. Only at this point is God saying, oh, by the way, it's, you know, as they said in as they said in the Two Towers, meat's back on the menu, boys. Because before this, it wasn't. So now this is bizarre. All of a sudden we've managed to survive what we've managed to live for. I think, when did the flood happen? The flood happened 4,500 years ago. So for 1,500 years ago, man had survived by just eating, as he says, green plants. So why would God, think about the dynamics of this, all of a sudden he's completely decimated the animal life. He's completely decimated. There's a couple of few guys, and maybe 7 others, and we've already sacrificed some for that sweet smelling aroma for God to say, oh, well done. But now he's told to man, oh, by the way, go off and start taking them as food. Honestly, the species at the time were in, we talk about species on the verge of extinction today. The last thing, if you were trying to look after animals today, that's the last thing that you would recommend. If there was somebody going back in that time and saying, no, God, I think we should really lay off the animals at the moment, because you've just decimated the species, and if a couple of these guys die or fail, or there's stillbirths, or there's only one birth every year, and you're asking us to eat them potentially, you're going to create, you're going to make a lot of species extinct by telling Noah and his sons and his family that they can eat the flesh of the animals and the bird and the fish. Maybe the fish. Maybe we're alright with the fish, but certainly let's leave everything else. So, he goes on to say, he goes on again, verse 7, and as for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply the earth and increase upon it. He's doing it again. It is the Star Wars, it's the Star Wars Adam and Eve Gone of Eden reboot. Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, I will now establish my covenant with you, your descendants after you, and every living creature that was with you, the birds, livestock, all the wild animals, all that came up the earth with you, every living creature on the earth, established with my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And then of course we got it's apparently a covenant that he signed between himself, not just the humans, but apparently all the creatures. So I bet you there was a large hurrah from all the creatures in the earth as they understood the full impact that they weren't all going to suffer and drown in a flood caused by their creator. So that is the flood story. As you can see, as we read it, there are certain things which don't quite make any sense, and now we're going to go on to things which completely don't make any sense, and that's entitled, that is sort of entailed in the whole flood story. So okay, timing is everything here, timing is everything. So let's just be specific with the timing. Right, the flood apparently is supposed to have happened, like I said, about 4,500 years ago. So 1,500 years, man's on the earth, and then we crack on for 4,500, the flood supposed to have occurred. Right, okay. Now, 1,000 years after this key event, 1,000 years after this key event, we have Moses on the scene with Egypt. Right, it's about 1,000 years after this event. And as we know, the Egyptians were very good at leaving behind details about what they believed in and the victories they had. They've inscribed it on monuments, in stone tablets, on papyrus rolls, in tombs. You just see all the hieroglyphics all the way around. It's fantastic. And the interesting thing about that is that only 1,000 years after this event do we have the Egyptians recording descriptions of animals. Now, what is blatantly obvious is that the Egyptians do not record, and this is only 1,000 years, and that's not long, only 1,000 years of this event of, Egypt's here, Turkey's here. So in other words, 1,000 years, round about here in Egypt, there's no record anywhere, when you look at the things that the Egyptians wrote or drew, of any animals that cannot now still be found here. Now this is where this doesn't make any sense at all, because you would think that before all the animals distributed themselves around the earth, that round about in Egypt, Turkey and the Middle East area, in here we would find the greatest density of different kinds of creatures anywhere else on the earth, because it's only 1,000 years. Yet 1,000 years later, after the flood, the only creatures which are recorded with the Egyptians and in the Bible itself are the same creatures that you find today in the same area. 1,000 years. You know, there's no mention of a kangaroo, sloth, or a cuddly koala bear. There's nothing. And all the great myriads of other animals and birds that we know of, not a sausage. Now, that doesn't make any sense, because round about here, we should still be seeing and finding the bones of all the creatures that came out of the ark. They should be there. And we know they're not. They should be recorded. Shows doesn't work. They should be recorded with all the civilizations, historical records of creatures that subsequently vacated the area and ended up migrating all over the world, never to be seen in this area again. And there isn't. Now, let's run some figures past you. The Bible there says every type of bird, every single type of bird must have been in the ark. Now, how many types of bird is there that we can find today? How many types of birds are there in the world? And this is bearing in mind that we personally might have been responsible for the deaths of some of them. 10,000. There are 10,000 different species of bird in the world. Now those 10,000 had to be in the ark because the Bible said it so. It says every type of bird was in there. Now some people may say, hold on a second, you didn't need every type of bird in there, because you could have had a couple of birds which over a few thousand years would turn into something else. But they didn't. We'll stop. Right, back again. Needed some water. So anyway, so there's this 20, what did I say it was? 10,000 species of bird. Had to be in the ark. So why don't we find those 10,000 species of birds mostly in that area today? 1,000 years later, all of a sudden, the only birds you find are the same ones that you see. So in other words, what we're trying to say here is that within 1,000 years, all the creatures that we found distributed over the world have already made their way there. They've already made their way there. They've gone. Because if they were still hanging around here, we'd know about it. They've already gone. In 1,000 years, the greatest migration of all time has occurred. Now, hold on a second. That's fine when you say that. But, you know, what about other things? For instance, within the world, there are 20,000 different species of butterfly. Now, as we see, a white admiral doesn't turn into, a red admiral doesn't turn into a white cabbage. You know, it doesn't happen. The same with birds. A kookaburra doesn't morph into a blackbird. In other words, you cannot say with any true conviction that the animals we see today, that they've sort of morphed into other varieties since the flood, because it's been such a short period of time. In other words, 1,000 years after the flood, the animals and birds and whatever they're recorded are the same ones. They've not changed. You can clearly still identify, looking at ancient writings, the animals today. In other words, they haven't developed or morphed into other things. In other words, boys and girls, it's simple. The animals that we see today are the animals that have existed for the whole length of time that man's been on the ground. So in other words, what we see today had to be in the ark. It had to be in the ark. There's no other way around it. 10,000 different species of bird, times that times 2 for everything, or 7 everything, another scripture. 20,000 species of butterfly, times 2, maybe. Now how you want to just go on, when it goes to, there are apparently 1 million different species of insects in the world. 1 million. If they weren't in the ark, they drowned. So they had to be in the ark. 1 million. They didn't in the short period of time since the flood, they haven't morphed into other things. It's the same creatures. You can identify these same insects in the Bible when they talk about the same insects which are spoken about in the Bible, and the Egyptians. They are still there today. They haven't changed into something else. 1 million types of insects. The total figure for the amount of different species there are on the earth is 6.5 million. And they all would have had to be in the ark. 6.5 million of species had to be in the ark, because the whole earth was flooded. A mean feat. Especially when we think that apparently Noah was only given 75 years to build the ark. He spent 75 years building it. So clearly didn't have the time to go and root up all these 6.5 million species in the world. So what are we saying? Are we saying that it says God brought them to him, so did God let's think about it. Over here is the koala bear. Here's a koala bear, so he's got to get all the way over to here, all the way to Turkey. Sorry, it wasn't Turkey, I'm Turkey. He's got to go all the way to the Middle East. Koala bear's got to go there. He's got to be in the ark. I think they were in the ark for nearly a year, probably 3/4 of a year. So they're in the ark for 3/4 of a year. He's got to make himself away all the way to there. And the worst thing about it is, of course, he's got to somehow, on his journey from here to here, unless of course we're led to believe that all the 6.6, let's say that all 6 million varieties of life was in that area, then it would have been dead easy, apart from the ark wouldn't have been big enough. Then begs the question, if they're all living in that area anyway, why after the flood did all of a sudden go over here? Oh, come on, this is just getting silly. So let's just say they were here anyway, then they went there and they decided, right, let's go back to our home now. Honestly, for instance, there's so many holes in this, it just beggars belief. It really does. So, how did Noah get all those species anyway? He didn't have time to do it. He was busy building the ark. So God had to have been there, and apparently they came up. Here we go. How did some of the insects which only exist in Australia, there are some types of insects that only found in Australia, only found down here, they're still there now. How did they get up there to get in the ark? And more importantly, how did they get back from the ark to get back down there? We're talking some huge distances. Okay, let's cover some of these ridiculous. We'll just cover. Right, here we go. Here's one. Let's just talk about this guy here. A favourite of mine, The koala bear. Oh, everybody loves a koala bear. Yes, the koala bear. Let's crack on with him. Right, where can you only find the koala bear? Australia. Australia. What does a koala bear eat? He only eats his eucalyptus leaves. That's the only thing he eats. Where do you find these leaves? Where do you find the trees? Australia! So somehow the koala bear got all the way from here to here, if we're believing that part of the story, and somehow took with him all the leaves that he needed. Now, honestly, even if a man walked that, it's going to take him 2 years at least to do the walk, and that's, a fair pace. The thing about koala bears, they don't actually even like being on the ground. They like hanging around in trees, doing very little all day long. They don't like being on the deck. They love trees. They're built to just be in trees. They don't like toiling on the ground at all. So this is a guy who just loves being in trees, eats a plant which you can only find in here, yet for 2 years we're commanding he's got to go over the sea, let's this way and island hop. A koala bear can maybe ford, he can swim across a small river if in need, but we're talking about some quite a few distances in the sea here, then somebody's got to traverse over this land, and yet on the way he's managed to find the only plant he eats. Oh dear. No, the distances we're talking are amazing. For instance, the distances between Australia and Turkey, 7,000 miles. 7,000 miles! For a wee guy, it's not the best swimmer in the world. He'll maybe do a river, but that's about it. But he's managed to do it. Now let's just imagine, for instance, it wasn't in Australia prior to. Let's just say that all the 6.5 million creatures were already in here. Still, at the end of the flood is, how did he get there? And how did he manage to munch his way all the way to Australia? Oh, come on. It just doesn't make any sense. 80% of the species found in Australia are only found in Australia. It's the mammals or the plants or the insects or it's 80% of the species found in Australia are only found in Australia. Why is it there? Why was this massive migration? And how did they get there? I'm not buying this fact that they all traverse because they've all got a particular diet. Right, there's this other guy here. This guy here is called a sloth, or a sloth as some people might say. Called a sloth, actually. You see his, just see his long, see those fingernails? And see why it's lying like that? Because he's useless on the ground. He is completely and utterly useless. And he's found round about this area of the world. This is where he lives. He's over here. Costa Rica, Peru, Chile. He's found down here. So this guy can't even walk on the land. He's not too bad in the water, but he loves trees, and he's a bit of a fussy eater as well. So we're to imagine that somehow, in between the opening of the doors of the ark and the Egyptians and other civilizations writing records, that he managed to get all the way from Turkey, and he must have had to travel. Well, which route is he taking? Is he swimming in the Med? Has he gone over the land? Well, he can't crawl. Christ almighty, how long that's going to take him. Even if he gets to this point here in Spain, he's got to cross over the Atlantic Ocean. It just doesn't make any sense. That distance there alone is he's got to swim 5,000 miles and he's got to eat on the way. He's not a fish. You'd love to put a slope there and say, right, head that way and see how you get on. It's not happening. And the thing is, not only has he got to make it, but his chum has got to make it as well. And again, in this area of Turkey, there is no records of bones of all these different creatures. The only records you find in this area are the ones that have been there for thousands of years. When you should be finding the bones and fossils of creatures from all over the earth. They're just not here. They're not there. Oh, it doesn't make any sense. And you've got to factor in the water. Imagine all the water landing on the earth. You can imagine that the temperature of the sea would probably cool down. All you need, even with, you can say, oh, the fish are all right, they'll survive. Not true. That, you know, if the Great Barrier Reef is dying, it's because there can be a change in the water, temperature of the water. All the coral dies. If all the coral dies, all the fish that live in the coral die as well. All of a sudden you've got a mixture of sea water and river water. You know, lots of different fish can't survive in the two environments. All of a sudden the water level's gone up. What are they supposed to eat? It's just nonsense. It really is. Thousands of fish would have perished. The coral would have perished. It's nonsense. It really, really is. None of that makes sense. Okay, Madagascar. Here in Madagascar, 75% of the creatures found in Madagascar can only be found in, you've got it, Madagascar. The distance between there and Turkey, again, it's thousands of miles. And there's a great big stretch of ocean. I've had some guy contact me today saying, oh well, I think the koala could have done this journey. How have all these animals managed to do that journey? Look how wide that is. Goodness sake. It's, even humans struggle to swim the channel. They can't do that. And we're expecting all these creatures who don't even like swimming to do it as well. Oh. It's nonsense. It's complete, utter nonsense. I really don't know what to say. Because it doesn't take a scientist to realise that none of the flood story makes any sense. It really doesn't. Now, getting back to what I started off with, the consequences of this are simple. If the flood story, as given in the Bible, as I've just read, from word, didn't really happen, that puts doubt on every single thing that we read in the Bible. It puts doubt on everything. Moses, Daniel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Saul, David, Goliath, and Jesus Christ, because even he alluded to this story of the flood. So, you cannot cherry pick your scriptures. You can't go and say, oh, I like this bit, but I don't like that bit. You have to take the book as a whole. So that means for every religion that is based on what the Bible teaches, every religion that draws its doctrinal teachings from the Bible. Sorry, this is the elephant in the room. This is the one story in the Bible that we can examine and say, this never happened. It is truly impossible. It couldn't have happened. And therefore that should then cast doubt on every single event that we have read in the Bible, which we subsequently, for a lot of us, based our beliefs on, based on what we do in our lives, based in our prospects and who we marry and who we see and all those other things, because of what the Bible teaches. And it just doesn't involve just Christian religions. There's other religions too who have fond respect of what's in the Bible, who aren't Christian religion. That's the same thing. And they all believe in the flood of Noah. It's the same thing. Any religion which has any belief in what is written in the Bible or parts of the Bible and accept the story of the flood, it means ultimately that it can't be true. It can't be true. And the same way today that when we go to the temples in Greece and Rome, and we go to the temples in Egypt, and we look at these monuments as some sort of ancient folly, to the worship of a god that subsequently got demoted and forgotten about in time. Our only hope is that in years to come, men really wise up and understand, and next things they'll go to visit cathedrals and mosques and churches and temples and synagogues or whatever it is, to realise that all those gods were just the same as the gods that they believed, 2,000, 4,000 years ago, and that they would just be monuments to man's lack of education at the time. It really isn't hard. So honestly, if you stuck with this story this long, well done to you. But these are just points that to me shout out to say, please examine this more. You cannot still watch this video and then just say, oh, well, doesn't mean anything, that story, or that there's got to be an answer. For instance, as an example of this, when I left the witnesses, I got a message. I asked a guy I knew to ask my presiding overseer a question. The question was, how did the kangaroo get to Australia? I never picked the collar bear. The kangaroo is quite good on his feet. He says, how did the kangaroo get to Australia? And his brilliant answer, based on what the society said, was that after the flood, there was a lot more raised lands. That's funny. That doesn't work out, does it? When there's a lot of water gone down, I would have thought there'd been more water, not less water. I would have thought now we've got less water than we used to have just after a massive flood. Logically, massive flood, more water, less land to get from A to B. Not the other way around. But that was his answer, because it's the question that anybody who believes in the Bible really struggles with answering some of those basic questions of how did they get in the ark, how many creatures were in the ark, and how in God's sake did all the creatures get from the ark and get to here, here and here. How did they manage to do this? Especially with the fact a lot of them were fussy eaters and had to try and survive on the way, and the amount of years it took to get there, that some of them could have died on the way through lack of food or anything else. Even if you think that even if a human was going to go from Turkey to Australia, that he would take some provisions. He would say, we've got a long journey on the way here, I don't want to starve to death, because there's bits of land here where there'll be food I can't eat. I'm going to get a load of donkeys and they're going to be completely stocked up for the 2 years it's going to get to there. And even if we may run out of food, I may have to then diversify my diet a bit by eating a bit of fish and a bit of meat here and some other stuff. Oh, and that's man. That's man who's able to plan. But we're talking about daft creatures like a koala and a kangaroo who are pick eaters, and the only thing that they can eat is over here. No wonder he wanted to get back there quick. I wonder who was helping him on the way. I wonder how in the world that Noah had all the different food varieties needed to keep these guys alive during the 3 quarters of a year that they were stuck in the ark, and then for the many months and years after the ark, when of course the whole earth had been decimated by a flood and all the crops had been ruined, completely ruined. There wasn't anything left to grow because of course God in his ultimate wisdom had flooded the earth. It was hopeless, it was gone, what a mess. Do you see how many problems there are with this? Anyway, I can only leave this with you and your judgment. It doesn't take long to just put A and B together to get C. It's never going to, it's not going to make sense, this flood story. And if, like I said, if the flood story doesn't make any sense, why should anything else in the Bible make any sense? And we can only hope that at a future time that mankind will come to his senses and realise to stop living their life in the principles of, some principles of a God who has no problem in annihilating people or planets on a whim, and that they may come to their senses. Unfortunately, as we see, there are other people in other lands who, my God is better than your God, and I'm worshipping God the way that he wants us to do and you're not, and they're literally blowing each other to bits. They are killing each other, and it's horrific. So you take God out of the equation You take out all these historical scriptures and books and take them out of the equation, this earth is going to be a lot better place to live in. So until we get enlightened and we can move on away from the God philosophy, and we can just get on with trying to actually get on saving the planet and making the best of our very short life we've got, there's always going to be the troubles that we see. So I'll leave that with you. If after this talk you still have faith in God, faith in the Bible, I'd just say to you, oh dear, you've got to really deal with that elephant in the room sometime, because it's massive. Anyway, see you later, bye bye.